Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this HCTalk podcast. As always, I'm your host, Lance Gormley, and our special guest on the program today is Huerter, who is from EmberHope, and she is the marketing director there. How are you doing today, Autumn?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Absolutely. I know as myself, as well as everybody else that resides in our community, has seen a lot of things going on at the EmberHope site here, or the EmberHope campus here in Newton. And there's been a lot of questions. I've seen it on social media. I've seen people just really be interested in what in the heck is going on there right now. So it was a great opportunity to have you all on. So that way we could just discuss what is EmberHope's mission? What is EmberHope doing? What are they doing in Newton, and why are they doing it? And you were gracious enough to come on the program. So like anything else and any other podcast we do, the first thing we do is just find out a little bit about the guest. So I want to hear a little bit about your story, Autumn, and where you hail from. Did you go to school, not go to school? How did you find yourself with EmberHope?
Yeah. Well, so I am the marketing director here at EmberHope, and I've been here for about 2 years. But I grew up in central Kansas. I'm around the Great Bend area. I graduated from Quivira Heights High School. I was the last graduating class from QH before they closed down and consolidated with Claflin down the road. So very, very rural. I'm a very, very small town girl. But I went to Cowley County Community College for my associate's degree, and then did a bachelor's degree at WSU, and then went on to work on my master's at K-State. Okay. And, you know, I've always had a heart for foster care and, you know, child welfare in general. I aged out of the foster care system myself. I was in the system from age 12 to 18. And so, you know, people ask me all the time, they're like, Autumn, are you going to major in social work? And I'm like, absolutely not. And I say that because I knew that I just had a lot of trauma, and going back and putting myself in that situation, you know, to serve those kids, I wouldn't be serving those kids in my full capacity because my heart would just be too tied up. You know what I'm saying? And so, but I'm like, well, what can I do? Right? Because everybody can do something. And when this opportunity came up, I was working in marketing. I was working from home for a private marketing firm out of Kansas City. And I saw the listing for EmberHope, and I had volunteered out here a number of times before. You know, I had been involved in different community events before. And I saw the listing came up, and I'm like, oh, this is a way I can use my gifts to serve the kids and, you know, to fulfill that passion that I have in my heart. And so I was really blessed to be able to combine those two, right? Not everybody can say that. Not everybody can say that they can do their work and serve their passion at the same time. And so, yeah, I'm just really, really blessed to be here.
So I don't, nor do I expect you to go into a whole lot of detail about what you just had mentioned, but it's interesting to me that you had said that you yourself have experienced the foster care system, and that you even mentioned maybe some trauma that you experienced in your life, that came full circle back to where you're able to help the same youth in need that maybe are going through the same things that you're going through, but in a different capacity. Yeah,
absolutely. You know, just a little bit. I definitely won't go into too much detail. I don't make everybody sad, but I do come up from a long line of addiction on both sides of my family. You know, addiction played a huge role. Addiction and poverty played a huge role in why I couldn't safely stay in my home, me and my brother. And, you know, it's just been growing up to break those cycles. Now that I'm a mom as well, you know, finding a way to break those patterns. And then trying to lead by example, right? Because it's really hard to sit across from a kiddo and say, I know what you're going through, when you grew up in a 2-parent home with a white picket fence with 2 parents with master's degrees, and, you know, you lived in the same bedroom your whole life. You know, I've lived in 23 different homes before I was 18 years old. And I carried everything I owned from home to home in a trash bag. You know, that's not a fake thing that people put out there just to grab your heart. That's real. And so I really wanted to come to EmberHope to try to tell those stories and to really just humanize these kiddos in a way that could really just reach people, and just let them know that they're just kiddos just like everybody else. So they just experienced some hardship and trauma that grown adults shouldn't even have to go through, let alone 5, 6, 10, 14-year-olds.
Yeah.
So
and I got to say, personally, that the youth, the kiddos, that are experiencing that situation, oftentimes it's completely out of their control.
Absolutely. I mean, we are not our parents' choices, unfortunately, and but we do reap the consequences of those choices. And so, and a lot of that trauma is very cyclic. It's very systemic. Like I said, if you look back at my family tree, the addiction didn't start with my parents. The addiction started with their parents and the parents before them. Well, now that addiction may have transformed from alcoholism, into drug abuse, just over the, past century, basically. But if you look at it, there was always addiction, there was always poverty, and there was just never quite the means to get past it.
Yeah.
So, safety, these kiddos want safety. And when you are in that lifestyle and you're exposed to that lifestyle, that is safety in a weird way, because it's predictable, right? You're like, well, I know how my addicted parents act. I don't know how two happily married people act. You know what I'm saying? So kids just want what's safe to them, and it's trying to show them, like I said, lead by example, to show them, hey, I've been here, but this is how, we get out of that cycle.
Okay, so take me back to the minute.
Yeah.
Or the moment in time in which you had mentioned that you were working for another private company, and can you take me back to the time when you saw the EmberHope job opportunity come up? And I don't know if, you said you had volunteered before, so there was probably some likenesses there. You could, really identify with that occupation and what they did and those that they're serving. But was it like a surreal moment where you knew, man, this is what I need to be doing? Or, I mean, how much of the mission, because that's going to prelude into the next question I have, which is, what's EmberHope's mission? Because we kind of got right into the conversation.
Sure.
Here, very personal, very quickly,
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I actually appreciate it, because I'm somebody that wants to know why somebody does what they do.
Sure.
I've always been very intrigued by human psychology and action, and why does a person make the choices that they make, both good or bad, and then realizing that everybody is the sum total of their life experience, and then you get youth into it and kiddos and the whole thing. And as a kid, I had a very troubled childhood, or whatever, and I came out on the other side similar to you, so we have likenesses there. But when you were sitting there at the computer or whatever it is, and however it came to be that this position came across your path, what were you thinking at that point in time?
This is actually a really cool story. So I was working, my husband was travel nursing at the time. He's an RN, he's travel nursing in the ICU. And I was home with our daughter. She was about 6 or 7 months old at the time. And I was working from home, and my boss from Kansas City was like, you can stay home with her, you can keep her home, you can work from home, you don't have to pay for daycare, and my husband was travel nursing, and it was a really huge blessing to get to stay home with my daughter. And then this came up, like, I had no intention of leaving my other job, and this just came up, and I was like, no. And I was like, maybe, no, maybe, like, and I was going back and forth about it. And my husband was just like, just shoot your shot. He goes, if you're feeling called to it, then just shoot your shot. And I was like, okay. So I applied, and I wasn't sure, and if it would lead to anywhere or what it would be like. And it was actually 2 years ago to like the 27th of February. So just a few days ago. And 2 days later, I received a Facebook message from a woman named Tamber, who is our director of donor relations, saying, I saw your application. Tamber was my foster care worker when I was in the system.
Wow.
And I was like, what do you mean? I didn't know you worked there. And she's like, yeah, I've worked here for a couple years. And I was like, oh my gosh. And but I was very adamant. I'm like, if I'm not the right person for the job, please don't pick me, because that's not going to be of service to the kids. Right. Like don't pick me. And she goes, don't worry, I will make sure to keep my input out of it, but I want to make sure that you can still come in and interview, and so I came in and interviewed, and I met Marty Kramer, who's our foundation president, and Mitch Dries, who's our VP of the foundation. And just right away, I'm like, these are two of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. And they were so kind, and put a big emphasis on work-life balance, because like I said, I just had a daughter under a year old. My husband was travel nursing, there's and my husband's also in the reserves and stuff. So I really needed a place that would continue to value work-life balance. And, and I was like, there's nothing pushing me to go, I get to stay home with my daughter and get paid and work.
Right.
But I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And it ended up being honestly one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. So
when you got there, did you feel like when you got the job and you stepped in the door, I mean, you work from home or whatever, just trying to use some kind of form of way to.
Yeah.
But when you got there, was there a moment where you felt, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be? This is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, like that? Yeah. Not an epiphany, no. But this confirmation that you were right where you were supposed to be, and that this was a culmination of every experience that you had in your life up to that point in time.
1,000%. I actually just got goosebumps with you asking me that question. When I walked in the door and I began to meet some of the leadership team, especially Nikayla Sandate, our president and CEO, and I got to talk to them, and I work next to Tamber every single day. Like I said, she was my former caseworker. And, I'm like, I get to weigh in on some of these conversations, and, I'm not clinical facing, I'm not, client facing, but there have been a number of times that leadership has come to me and they've said, hey, we have this case with a kiddo. What would have made you feel comfortable in that situation, and or what might have helped you in that situation. And so even though I'm not directly client facing, I do, they do value my input, and I do get to share, some things. And, I've received feedback that some of the things that I've shared have helped, for example, one of those things is, a kiddo is scared to come into a new foster home, and they're scared. They don't want to leave the car because they don't know who the family is. And I'm like, well, what if we made like a lookbook of a family, and it has their picture and their likes and their dislikes and their name and what their favorite food is or what their favorite color is, and we can show that to a kiddo, or a PowerPoint slide or whatever. Yeah. And that way it's like, hey, this is Jim and Sally, and this is their dog, and this is what your room will look like when you get there. And so they're not walking into something else unexpected. And so that was just one it seems small, but to the kiddo it's big.
That's a huge impact. I mean, that's almost like a procedure and practice thing, where if you're not in that situation, you haven't experienced that, then you don't have the ability to look at it from that perspective to say, this can be very terrifying, when you take a youth that has been in a bad situation, everything that they have and know, even though it might be dysfunctional, is still familiar, right? So then without you having gone through in your own personal life and experienced that, then you wouldn't have had that to contribute. And I would hope that becomes or has become standard practice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's definitely something that we're working on. Of course, it takes a while to build a database that size, but
it does.
But
it's a lot of moving parts.
And I tell people, I'm like, gosh, if you were going to a hotel in a city that you've never been to, and are you looking up the hotel on Google Maps? Are you looking at the reviews? Are you looking at the pictures of the interior of the room? Of course you are.
Even trying to eyeball the pictures of it from the outside to see maybe what neighborhood you're in.
Exactly. You're moving the little yellow guy around on Google Maps, right? I'm like, that's all we're doing for the kid.
Yeah.
But that's just you're staying there for a week. This kid, maybe there for, a year or 2 or 5, and so before they come in, they just want to know that it's safe, and that's all that you would want to know too.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. That's powerful. That's impactful what you just unpacked there.
Oh, thank you.
I was going to say that. It's helping me understand where your heart is and who you are as a person. Did you do your master's? Did you get a master's in communications?
My master's degree is in elementary education.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Then COVID hit, and my first year teaching would have been during COVID.
Oh no.
And so, because I wanted to make a difference with kids.
Yeah.
And I was working at Cowley College at the time in the admissions office, and I was mentoring and enrolling and being an admissions counselor and advisor to young college kids. And at the community college level, a good chunk of those kids were first generation college students, single moms, people who had come from trauma, who were really trying to better their lives. And education greatly changed the trajectory of my life. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I was like, and I thought education would be a great way to do that. And it would have been, but at the same time, I'm like, the core of what I wanted to do was to change the trajectory of kids' life and just show them, this is what did it for me. This is what could do it for you too, and, So then COVID happened, like I said, and I was like, oh, no, I'm not teaching online for my first year. Right. And then that streamlined for me working from home in marketing, and writing was my other passion. Like I did journalism, like student newspaper and journalism and photography. And so I got to write from home, and then, so it just kind of segued. It kind of, like I said, it brought together my love for writing and photography, serving kids.
Right. Just
to
a head.
Yeah.
Well, and I was trying to get somewhere there. I just had assumed, right?
Yeah, sure.
That communications was your forte.
Yeah.
Marketing obviously is a part of communications, but something that I've noticed about a lot of people who are in communications, such as yourself, or marketing, such as yourself, where they are part of an organization that they truly believe in, right? Somehow or another, they are able to believe in and take part in and really understand the vision and the mission of the organization or business that they're advocating for, that they're out here sharing and projecting what that mission is. So just to transfer over into EmberHope, what is EmberHope's mission?
Our mission is to positively change the lives of children and families through trauma-informed programs that are rooted in faith. That's our mission in a nutshell, and to really inspire positive change in our communities, with our kiddos, with our foster families, with our donors, whatever that looks like. We just really want to inspire positive change.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so and maybe I got one before the other, but can you, like, for people that are here locally that are listening to this podcast, and we had mentioned at the beginning, or I had mentioned at the beginning, that people are seeing the Newton campus, and they're seeing a lot of changes and things that are going on. I think most people would formally think of it as Youthville. So if you're listening to the program and you're like, where's EmberHope? It's for a long time it was the Youthville campus, right? Sure. So not necessarily how that all came to fruition in EmberHope and everything like this. I'm not asking for you to like give me a history lesson here, but how did EmberHope evolve?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll give you just a very tiny history lesson, but because our 100th year in operation, our 100th year of service is next year, and so it did begin as the Kansas Children's Methodist Home 100 years ago as part of the Orphan Train movement, and it has obviously transformed over time. We are EmberHope. Youthville is still one of the umbrellas underneath EmberHope. So Youthville is our residential services, which is predominantly what's housed at our EmberHope campus, and then also our licensing, like licensing foster parents, is under the Youthville umbrella. And so, for example, I'm under the foundation umbrella because we're marketing and development / fundraising. So just to kind of give a little visual. But I mean, we have a lot going on at the the Newton campus over here, and I'm sure if you drive past it, you're like, what? There's some big machinery out
Yes.
there. So in addition to, of course, us having a residential services out there, which have been out there for quite some time, where we serve girls, teen girls, and those girls can be in foster care or they cannot be in foster care. We definitely serve both. And then we have our Opportunity Academy out there, which is through the Newton School District. But we serve kids in an alternative school capacity, or they're still getting a high school diploma. But then we're building Hope Estates. And on our website, if people want to learn more, see the construction pictures or see, the mock-up pictures, emberhope.org/Hope Estates, you can go look at it. But we are building what's called intergenerational housing. So our goal is to combine, teens aging out of foster care with pairing them up with some older folks in our community, and creating kind of this mentorship bridge for them. I know that from working in marketing, I used to do a lot of marketing for senior living communities, and some of the things that one of the biggest challenges for older adults is loneliness, and maybe their spouse passed away, or maybe some of their friends have passed away, and but they have so much to give and so much to share, and so many skills and abilities, and so pairing them up with a kiddo who needs an adult, who needs a safe adult, who needs, somebody to teach them how to sew or cook, or, right. Or just a friend to talk to at the end of the day. So that's going to be the goal of Hope Estates is to bridge those two generations together.
Well, and it's interesting that you said something, because I think a lot of people, I know including myself, forget the fact that, the foster care system, generally speaking, only goes until you're 18. So
well, yes and no.
Okay.
So yes and no. So you are in state custody until you're 18 or roughly there. There are instances where it's like, oh, you turn 18 in February, but school goes until May. You can stay until custody until you graduate or whatever. But then there's something called independent living, which if you're aging out, that's usually the track that you go. Now it's optional to do that. It's very advantageous for kids aging out to do that, because there's financial support, there's like college tuition waiver, to help pay for education. There's an independent living caseworker, so they can get you help set you up in an apartment, or into a job, or if your car needs repaired, or something like that. So you can actually stay not in the system. Technically you're not in state custody, but you are,
there's still resources to help people. 1,000%. Because I was going to say, I don't know if I'm the only one, and maybe it's my own ignorance and I'm being vulnerable by saying this, but I was really under the impression that, well, when you turn 18, it's a boot out the door because you're done with the foster care system, so aged out.
No, absolutely not. And that's okay, and that's part of why I'm here, is because I really want to help educate, right? Like education is such a powerful tool, and in breaking stigmatization, and but now it is optional. Now if a kiddo's like, I don't want anything to do with the foster care system anymore, that's their right, but I highly encourage kids, like I said, Tamber was actually one of my independent living caseworkers, and she encouraged me, it's like, I'm having a hard time at college. Well, what are you having a hard time with? What are you needing? Well, I have to work so much, to pay my rent. And she's like, well, do you need help to apply for the rent stipend? Even if it was $200, $250 a month, that's a lot of money to a college student. And that allowed me to cut back hours so I could get a scholarship, and I could focus on my scholarship, And so, there are definitely so many tools and resources, and we're like, let us help you, until, 21 or 22, I believe is usually around the age where, like, go free, leave the nest. Right. But you don't have to stay in a foster home, but we're still going to provide you tools and resources.
Yeah, and I guess that's that is a need that you're saying EmberHope is trying to meet here at the Newton campus. When you come into this, because you're talking about a youth that's just turned 18, and they, for all intents and purposes, yeah, there are still some resources that are available to people, but it can become very, I mean, I would think very lonely very quick, and that's a pivotal point when, you know, you've brought this youth up to this point in time, but then it becomes, well, do they go back to the same situation they came out of, because that's you know type of thing. And if you're doing what you all are doing, then you're providing a way and an atmosphere to make sure that they get to that point just a little bit longer and can get through some stuff.
Right. Yeah. You know, because, you know, there may be instances where their bio parents or their bio family is a safe place to return to at 18. It was for me. You know, it was
because that becomes the familiarity at that point.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like my dad just celebrated 20 years clean and sober, and my dad was a safe space to return back to. I moved down the street from him. Me and my brother got a house and we moved down the street from him. But there are times it's like returning back to their bio family would just put them right back in that cycle, or maybe that bio family is a gang, you know, and obviously that would put them right back to where they started. And so if we really want to break those cycles, we have to continue to walk with them. And that's what we aspire to do. That's what the Newton campus will do. Maybe they're not ready to go right into an apartment or a dorm room by themselves. That's again, brand new scary environment, right? But you're here on the Newton campus, you're here with people who have trauma-informed training. You know, you're taking these classes, because we're going to have classes, we're going to have life skills classes, we're going to, have, we already have a resource room on our Newton campus that's chock full of, hygiene supplies, blankets, pots and pans, vacuums, things that were like, what do you need to get started in your apartment or your dorm? Yeah. Here, let us help. And a lot of those are donations from the community or, grants or things like that. Mm-hmm. No, we don't want to be like, okay, 18, bye. Again, it is their choice, but we always strongly encourage kiddos, let us continue to walk together. That way we ensure, kind of a smoother handoff into the greater beyond.
Right. No, and yeah, that's amazing. See, I just just for the facility aspect, mm-hmm. nuts and bolts of what everybody's seeing going mm-hmm. on, right? There's a ling of the ground. Yeah. There's a pretty big area there that obviously something's being built sure. there. So how many kiddos does, what's that going to look like? I mean, how many, is it just going to be one big building? Is it going to be a few small buildings? How many kiddos and individuals does this hope to serve?
I believe it is a 32 unit complex. 32 okay. But right in there, but it's going to be like an apartment building, it's going to be like a nice high-end apartment building, just like you drive through Wichita and see, Very cool. And it's going to have a community garden area, we're really hoping, for, like a cool fountain or like a fun, meeting space, but there will be, community gathering rooms, just like you'd see, like I said, at a normal high-end apartment complex, where you can have birthday parties, you can have Christmas celebrations, you can have, if we wanted a financial planner to come in and host a seminar for people, or, anything like that. We want to hold monthly opportunities, or at least once a month opportunities for them to come in and learn life skills and have that really good sense of community. And then another thing too is there will be some room set aside for, say a mom has left a domestic violence situation and she wants to get her kids back, but she cannot afford to move it into an apartment yet. But so she can move into Hope Estates. She can reintegrate her kids with her at Hope Estates while she saves up money and then phase out and get her own apartment, or maybe grandma needs to adopt her grandson and, just doesn't have a 2-bedroom home yet, or a 2-bedroom apartment yet. Okay, well, let's get you into Hope Estates while we work and find a good permanent fit for you. So it will also serve in that capacity. The main focus will be the intergenerational, but we will have some of that available as well.
And going on a deeper level here, mm-hmm. It's I said this before on another podcast, I know, and I've used this analogy before, but when we talk about education, a lot of people just think about like formal education, right? Books or going to school or college or whatever. But education is much more than that, right? If you've never changed a tire and nobody has shown you how to change a tire, your chances of being able to effectively change a tire, and that's just an example because it seems like very basic. Somebody knows how to do it. It's very basic. You change the tire. There's only a few steps that happen, whatever, and you learn, and then you can do that. But I had an experience one time. I've got some kiddos myself, and with my oldest, it was kind of strange to come to this realization, but it was something at some point in time. It was about wanting to earn some money for chores.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm like, okay, well, because I hate sweeping, got to do it, but I hate sweeping. So you can sweep the floor. Okay. That's one way you can earn, some chore money. Okay. And as I'm watching him sweep the floor, I'm like, wow, that's not how you sweep the floor, And immediately it dawned on me, unless you teach this person how to do this, they're not going to know how to do it, right? They're just not going to know. And he has the benefit of having a parent there that's like, hey, this is how you do X, Y, and Z to accomplish this task, right? So when you talk about all of the resources that you're pouring into the lives of these youth, I think people forget oftentimes that if you have a youth that is not taught how to do something, they're not going to know. They're just not going to know. It's going to be completely foreign to them. You might be like, oh, sit down and do your bills, right? This is what you have in your income. This is what, if they've never done that.
Right.
How do they know to do it?
Yeah. If, there's so much foundation work that goes on at home for raising kids, right? My 2.5-year-old, she knows how to load the dishwasher. She was helping me mop the floors. She loves it. She's like, no, mommy, I do it. And, but I even look back, there are so many things that I had to learn as an adult. Like my poor husband, when he first met, I'm like, I know how to make hamburger helper.
And macaroni and cheese and hot dogs.
And so
cooking, you don't even think about that.
I was like, because that's what we got. That was what we got at the food banks. That's what I grew up eating because that's what we got at the food banks. And thankfully, I'm a much better cook over the past decade. And now I'm like Gordon Ramsay. What do we got in our cookbook today? And but yeah, that's it's just those things that seem so basic to the general public, whether that's even just, hey, we need to brush our teeth twice a day, we need to make sure we shower every other day, whatever it is. There's somebody they might not have had somebody at home telling them this is what you're supposed to do. And our foster parents, our residential services, especially if they're older, they're trying to hop in and teach them, but if they're 10, 11, 14 years old, that foundation is delayed. And it's hard work. It's really rewarding work, but we do have to go back and lay that foundation for those kiddos and teach them. And I think that's just a really great point that you made, because I don't think somebody generally wouldn't think of that.
No, I mean, because we take for granted our life, right? We have, as humans, have this, it's almost like, well, if I wouldn't do that to you, then you wouldn't do that to me mentality, right? But you can't expect yourself from other people. So you can't expect, just because your life was one where you were taught how to cook, how to clean, how to have personal hygiene, how to go to bed on time and wake up, all these things that these kiddos deserve, and then you have, compounded or even complicated with the fact that they're in foster care, which just is the telltale sign that they did not have a conducive home environment that would allow for them to learn these basic life skills.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the goals that we strive for in the foundation, within development and fundraising. One of the key funds that we have is called the Help Fund. And that's for bridging gaps, because, obviously, we take care of shelter and housing and food and education, at least middle school, high school, primary school, whatever. But we want kids to have what any other what their peers would have, right? If their peers can easily, mom and dad can easily buy a prom dress for them. Oh, if that's going to keep her, well, she can't go to prom. She doesn't have a prom dress. She can't play travel basketball. Nobody's going to pay for it. We don't have the funds. Their foster parents are like, we don't have the funds to pay for them to play travel basketball. That was me. That was my experience. I wanted to play travel basketball. Sorry, kiddo. Whatever that looks like. Going to summer camp. Just doing these things that any quote unquote normal family could provide. We don't want the kids to miss out. And so, or getting contacts, because contacts aren't covered by, state care or, whatever, or braces only in certain situations. So we want to help, if you can't be out there playing football, glasses on,
Yeah.
So what can we do? And so that's what we get donations for our help fund, or, even if people are like, oh, I'm going to donate cleats, I'm going to donate, some new basketball shoes, or, whatever that looks like. That's just kind of one way that we try to help.
It's interesting because a thing that came to my mind right now, just as we're talking through this or whatever, it really does take a village to raise our kids. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of, I keep projecting to say I think a lot of, and maybe it's more of, my coming to understanding more as I get older and like have interviews with people like you and doing what you do, is just this lack of awareness. Mm-hmm. I think is really what it is, that I would believe many people have when it comes to the youth in our community and what they desperately need and desperately deserve to be functioning adults.
Yeah. We're doing, all of the clinical background groundwork, right? Like we're getting them to therapy, we're getting them, and if they need the equine program, or you know what I'm saying, like something like that, like we're doing everything we can from a clinical perspective, to meet kids where they are and help them. But they're just like we've talked about, they're just simple things that it's like, a pair of cleats could be a game changer. Maybe going out on the football field is therapy, and if they don't get the football cleats, they can't go out and play. Well, now they've lost their outlet. Now they feel alienated from their peers, and it just goes on and on. And so, it's just these little things that seem little that truly, truly add up and just make a kid feel seen, feel special, and, just puts them on closer to the same playing level as their peers. Yeah. I remember my brother and I, he sent me a YouTube video, and the YouTube video is a decade, if not older now. But it was, they had all these kiddos like lining up on a soccer field, and they were asking questions. It's like, take a step forward if your parents are married. Take a step forward if you've lived in the same house your whole life. Take a step forward if, you had dinner on the table last night. Take a step forward. And then, they get done asking questions, and 2/3 of the soccer field is almost to the other end, and you've got a handful of kiddos still, and it's like, okay, now run the race and tell us who wins. Start, go.
Interesting.
And the kids are starting all the way at the back, and then you have 2/3 up there at the front, and those kids won the race. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so it's just a great analogy. Yeah, it was just a great visual for just kind of how we feel, our kids feel, how I felt. It's like I'm starting, I'm not starting at the starting point. I'm starting all the way halfway back the track.
Yeah.
So
and which is an amazing thing just for you personally, because knowing that you yourself were in a situation where you were one of those kiddos that were starting at the back, mm-hmm. That you've been able to accomplish so much and go so far to come full swing back to being able to try to nurture and provide and support an organization that tries to make it less to where those kids are at the back, because you're meeting basic needs.
Yeah, exactly. I saw this meme on Facebook the other day that was like, if I had gone to school with my kids, I'd think that they were rich kids. And I was like, Yeah, I was like, I would think that my daughter is like, oh, you're a rich kid.
Yeah. Okay, come
and so anyway, but that's it. That's what I want. I want for the other kid. That's what I want for the kiddos and our care too. Is just for them, to grow up and break those cycles, and if they go on to have children of their own, to really feel like that, they are starting, at the starting line and not in the back.
I got a real direct question
Sure.
to ask you. Who you are as a mother and a wife, and in your career today, right? Today, and what you are able to do for your kiddo or kiddos. I don't know if we could just one.
Just one.
Maybe more in the future,
Yes.
but your kiddo. Okay.
Yeah.
You're the mom that wants to be there and provide, and like you had mentioned, just the fact that if you had your kiddo next to you growing up, that you would think that they had a form of privilege, if you want to look at it.
Sure,
that way.
absolutely.
Lack of a better word, but that they were able to start out in that situation. What is it personally for you in your own life that caused you to break the cycle and offer your kiddo what you didn't have, instead of just doing the same cycle?
Yeah, for me, I had some really amazing adults. I had some great foster parents. During my last 2 years in foster care, my high school best friend, her parents took me in as it's now called a soul placement. It didn't have a title back in the day, but they weren't licensed foster parents or anything. They just kind of got a temporary license because I was over 16 to keep me. And, I just remember that it's like these people are invested in me. I'm not just a number. I'm not, even I could say that about my caseworkers, and I was not placed through EmberHope either. So, but it was just like, man, these caseworkers really care about me. These people really care about me. My community really cares about me. Like I said, I was in a teeny tiny town. I was in Bushton, Kansas, and
I know where that's at.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm like, I had my basketball coach offering me a home. I had one of my teachers offering me. They're like, what do we need to, because something had happened with my foster home, and none of us girls could stay there anymore, and just seeing that many people cared. And then on the other hand, watching my dad, my biological dad, fight for sobriety. Like I said, he just celebrated 20 years. I called him. He's amazing. And I called him literally it was February 7th was his 20th anniversary. I'm like, Dad, congratulations. I was like, you're halfway. You've almost been sober as long as you were addicted.
Yeah.
Which is huge. Yeah, and and just seeing how hard my dad was fighting, and I'm like, man, I just want this, I want normal, as weird as normal is not really the right word, because normal's different for everybody, but I'm like, I want
a safe, secure, established environment for your children, for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And I knew, like I said, I wanted to have children. I knew I wanted to get an education. And even if I didn't know how to get there, I was going to,
fight tooth and nail to get it.
Exactly. So, and again, it all boiled down to just having support, just supportive adults, like caring adults, safe adults, who encourage me, who listen to me, who, open their homes and hearts to me. Otherwise just a random 16-year-old girl. Right. Or even before that, so yeah, that's what made all the difference.
Yeah. And then one more personal question. Of
course.
Do you view yourself as a survivor?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm the type of person though where I'm like, oh, I didn't have it as bad as somebody else, which is true. I was very fortunate to not run into some of the gangs or the trafficking situations or things like that, that I know a lot of our kiddos have been through. And so sometimes I'm like, oh, survivor is too high of a title. Right. What I'm saying? I'm like, I'm just a person. But I do think that survivor, the title survivor, is I think that's up to each person to decide if they're a survivor, but so I'm always the person who downplays my trauma, or I use dark humor to, right. to downplay it. But yes, But I definitely would classify myself as a fighter. So I'm definitely a fighter, and in the most positive way. Don't put me in the ring; I'll cry. But
your desire to be better than you were the day before, and to
absolutely
overcome everything that's been put in your way, and all obstacles, and figure out a way to get around them, and just pull yourself up from your bootstraps, for lack of a better way to look at it, to have a productive, what we would say, a normal, right?
Definitely
for
quotation
some
marks.
Normalcy to your life, you know?
Yeah. So I just knew, I'm like, man, there's got to be something better out there than the cycle that my family had been stuck in. And like I said, I saw my dad fighting to break that cycle. Unfortunately, when I was 20, my mom died of a drug overdose. And I had to take her off life support. And it was one of those things. It's like I had one parent who, and they were divorced at the time. So I had one parent who was like, yes, I want better. And I had one parent who unfortunately was kind of staying in that cycle. And I looked at them both, and I'm like, which one do I want? And I was like, this one. So. Yeah.
What, as far as EmberHope is concerned, what's a strength, or I guess my question would be, in your opinion, what is a success that's just maybe pinpoint one success that you feel EmberHope is doing well, or is good at doing? And then what are maybe a challenge or some challenges that you might face?
Yeah, I think EmberHope is doing a great job at finding new innovative ways to serve our children and families. Hope Estates being just one really key example. But there are some smaller ways, just like doing back to school drive, and getting making sure all of our kiddos have everything that they need for back to school, or shopping, doing personal Christmas ornaments for every single kiddo, not just giving them a blanket gift, or a generic gift, but giving them some stuff that they're really asking for and wanting, so we really just try to meet each individual kiddo where they are. Just challenges in general. Right now, there are more foster kiddos in care than there ever has been before. And, that means, rising to the challenge of recruiting new foster homes, getting safe placement for all of our kiddos, meeting them where they are, as far as, the programming, the counseling services, rehabilitation services, anything like that they may need. That's just with the amount of kiddos in care right now, just striving just to continue to provide the same high quality level of care. So I think one of our biggest needs is just, more foster parents, just more community involvement, at any level, whether that's just as simple as volunteering for a few hours, or, signing up to be a foster parent, and anything in between.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. Well, we are coming to the end of the program.
Sure.
I always give the guest the last word to speak directly to the hearts and the minds of anybody listening. You can say whatever you would like to say. Just want to go ahead and let you have your time.
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me. It's been an honor to be able to share my story. And to anybody out there who's listening and they might feel called, there are so many ways to get involved with foster care. I think some people think it's just black and white, like, oh, you have to be a foster parent, right? I mean, we have job openings, there are different job openings at EmberHope. You can donate. Well, like I said, if people want to donate blankets or new shoes, or, school supplies, or, something like that, if you want to sign up to, maybe provide a meal, drop off a meal to a foster family, like, hey, they got to do a new placement on Tuesday. Why don't I bake a lasagna and bring it by to them? There are just a huge multitude of ways, to get involved, with child welfare, and EmberHope in general. Just get educated, ask questions, and never judge a book by their cover.
Very cool, and very true. With that being said, I'd just like to thank everybody for listening to this HCTalk podcast. As always, I was your host, Lance Gormley, and our guest on the program was Autumn Huerter, who is the marketing director for EmberHope. Have a good one, everybody.